Hello, everyone. It's Sunday once again. It's just gone 1 minute past 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the UK. It's 9 o'clock in Manila. I hope some of you, my dear friends in Manila, are joining us today, joining us live. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Chama. Today's guest, oh my God, she's absolutely amazing. I was doing this script last night, and I was sort of like thinking, whoa, what an incredible person she is. She's not just a drummer, but an artist, a writer, a dancer, a radio presenter, and she's an original punk. I mean, if you think think of the Sex Pistols or I don't know, the Clash as punk. I mean, she's punk even before the term punk was there, even before it was called punk. She's absolutely amazing. So I'm gonna bring her on now. My dear friends, please welcome Dorothy Max Pryor.
Hi.
Yay! Hello, Max.
Thank you very much for having me on here. Lovely to be
Oh,
here.
well, thank you.
Yeah, kind of sunny afternoon in Brighton in the
Yeah,
UK.
it has been raining here in Stockport. It was
Oh,
like
it's doing everything here. We've had about 10 different types of weather. Look how English we're being. We're talking about the weather. There's so much of it at the moment. It's been through every season today here, but right
yeah.
now it's summer.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I know you're very busy. I've seen your social media posts. You seem to be so like everywhere, not just in the UK, but in Europe as well. So like doing all your shows and gigs, whatever. But I the time that I met you, the first time I met you, or the only time I've met you actually, is when I went to London last year for the book event. And I must admit, I was there to see Dave Barbarossa.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because I
Who
didn't
wouldn't be?
really,
The lovely Dave. I mean, yeah.
yeah, I didn't really know much. I've not heard of Max Pryor or Rema-Rema at the time. But when I found out that you're a drummer and you were talking to Dave Barbarossa about like drumming and everything, I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. And unfortunately, that evening your book was sold out. I think you've run out copies of your book at the time. Yeah. So, but I will ask you about that later
Yeah.
on in the show. I just want to say that my tech support, who's not here at the moment, he's in Dublin. He said that sound and vision looking great here in Dublin, so that's a good sign.
Good. Good.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah. So welcome to Ask the Drummer. Episode 92 is all about you, Dorothy Max Pryor. So can you just tell us, where were you born?
I was born in London, in South London. Yeah, to just a fairly regular working class family, car mechanic dad, dinner lady mum, very ordinary sort of Anglo-Irish background.
All right. And are you from a musical family?
Not at all, no. No, although I say that, my mum always used to sing at parties, but no, it's not really what you'd call a musical family. Nobody played instruments or anything. Oh God, I keep saying these things, and I suddenly remember actually my grandmother, who when I was very little was still alive and lived in the same house as us. She did actually have an upright piano, and she used to play old musical songs on her piano. So I'd forgotten about her. Yeah. So
All
they
right.
skipped a generation, and I got
Yeah.
my grandmother.
So what was London like, or what was your childhood like in London? Because there's so much about when you moved out, and
Yeah,
like in your book. But
yeah.
what was it like when you were growing up in London?
Um, it was a very mixed, it was at the time that, I mean, my family are kind of Irish immigrants, or half my family is, part of my family is, but at the time there was a lot of kind of West Indian immigrants and Indian, from the Indian subcontinent. So South London was very much like the area we lived in, Crystal Palace, Norwood, that sort of area. A lot of really big old houses that were split into flats that were multi-occupational, and it was very vibrant. I mean, not very far from Brixton, which is an area that a lot of know of as a multicultural sort of area. Um, yeah, and a bit rough. There was all the skinhead thing happening as I was growing up. I used to be a kind of glam rocker. So,
All right.
so I had like stones thrown at me by skinhead girls when I was a teenager. I was a
Oh
boy,
no.
so I was like, yeah, I'd be wearing like a blue satin jacket or velvet looms or something like that, and there was all these sort of skinhead girls that yeah just used to gang up and pick on people. So it's quite kind of rough and ready.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've read online that you're a dancer all your life.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that like your first love?
I just got sent to, like a lot of people of Irish heritage, I got sent to Irish dancing classes when I was very little. So from the age of about 6 onwards, I was competing in Irish dancing
All
competitions.
right.
So
Oh, wow.
yeah, and then I did the Irish dancing first, and then came like tap and stage dance, and I don't know, loads of things. So yeah,
What
I've
about
always danced.
musical instruments? Did you learn how to play any musical
No, it
instruments?
wasn't, again, just part of this kind of working class culture. It wasn't really a thing. Uh, it wasn't really something that was part of the kind of landscape. I mean, just played, right recorder at school, and or banged
Yeah.
bangle occasionally. Uh, sang in school, and wasn't sang loudly but out of tune a lot of the time. So was never considered musical, by anybody really. But for me, to tie things into drumming, for me, dancing and drumming go absolutely hand in hand, foot in foot. Particularly the type of dancing that I love most. Things like Irish dancing and tap dancing are basically percussive forms. You're just playing percussion with your feet rather than with an instrument. Your feet are your instrument. Possibly no, in Irish dancing, actually, you often dance with your hands, you know, your arms by your side. All the
Yeah.
emphasis is on the feet and on the sound patterns that the feet make. So
Yeah.
it is, to me, the dancing and the drumming actually completely make sense together, because it's all about like beats and percussion and timing and rhythm. And I think that's my musicality is in that direction rather than things to
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
harmony and whatever.
Well, that's very interesting because I never actually saw like associates or like dancing to drumming. Because my next question to you is, what got you into drumming?
Um, I was living in a house in South Kensington that was at 69 Exhibition Road, which is the name of the book that I wrote,
Yeah.
because the memoir sort of circles around the time living in the house. And I was just living on the floor of this small room that was occupied by a girl that was always called German Monica. I'm sure she had a surname, but she was German, and her name was Monica. And she was always just called German. In the punk days, people just often didn't have surnames. So anyway, German Monica was singing in this band, and I came across two of her bandmates who were called Andy and Bid, who were wandering aimlessly around the basement of the house trying to find her. And when I bumped into them, they just said, "Oh, do you happen to know someone called Monica?" So I kind of took them upstairs. We had a cup of tea. We got chatting and about this band, and then they just suddenly said, kind of out of the blue, they just said, "Oh, and we need a drummer. So would you be our drummer?" And I, said I don't play drums and I don't have a drum kit, but they this is punk. You don't really need to know how to do something to do it. So I ended up agreeing, and that group, which I just always refer to as the band with no name, because it's the band that eventually split into two halves. It's a much more complicated story than that. There's lots of toing and froing, but it eventually splits into Adam and the Ants and the Monochrome Set. So that was this nascent band that we didn't play anywhere. I mean, we just played in bedrooms. And the band had two lead singers. One was the boy that I'd met in the basement, Bid, who went on, he was the lead singer in the Monochrome set. And then
Right.
the other singer, well, there was Monica also, and then there was this third person who was called Stuart Goddard, who was an art student, and a very shy boy in kind of lumberjack shirt and glasses and things. And he eventually decided that he was going to change his name to Adam Ant.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and Monica got kind of chucked out after a while. So, I think the reason they wanted me in, and the reason they had Monica in, is because they were real Velvets fans. So, thinking about it, having a German additional singer, female German singer, and
Like
having
Nico.
a female drummer, I think it just fitted their kind of image of how they would be as the English Velvets.
Wow.
So, yeah, I was just told I was going to play drums,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, all right then, why not?
So did you get yourself a drum kit when they said it?
And Andy and Bid got me a drum kit from one of their school friends.
Right.
I can't remember the price now. Obviously, this was 1976, so it would have been, anyway, whatever it was very reasonably priced. It was a really beautiful drum kit.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. It's a Pearl Maxwin, so it was a sort of small, compact drum kit. It was silver sparkle, and it just had the absolute basics. It had a floor tom-tom, one hanging tom-tom, a snare drum, cymbals, and a hi-hat.
Yeah.
But I decided the first time I rehearsed with them, I decided that I didn't kind of. I said, okay, we've got this drum kit now. So how do I play drums? So Bid kind of sat there and did the usual, kick on the bass drum, and I had the drumstick was hitting the snare, and then he showed me with the right hand to hit the hi hat, and we go. So I sat down and I tried this. I should say I had stiletto heeled boots on at the time, and I hadn't got anything else to change into. So I'm here trying to work out the left foot pedal, the right foot pedal, and how to do all this. And I didn't like the sound of it anyway, so I just said, do you mind if I just kind of throw the hi-hat to one side for a while? And I then, in that rehearsal and subsequently worked out lots of patterns without the hi-hat, involving mostly the floor tom-tom and the snare, or the floor tom-tom and the hanging tom, so it was a lot more kind of Burundi style patterns, tom-toms, or just very, or very early rock and roll, sort of like, that twist beat of, the double hit on the snare, So I just thought, I don't really need the hi hat, so I didn't bother bringing it back.
Oh, so did you ever go for drumming lessons, or that's it? You just
No, never did.
Wow.
Nothing. Never learned anything from anybody. And I mean, I was always a really, really minimal drummer. I just, Mo Tucker was my inspiration, really. And the only, I don't know, as far as kind of rock and roll drummers, I mean, I like Ringo and I like Charlie Watts, but most of the people I liked were the people that always subtracted rather than added. They worked out what was the least they could do that was efficient,
Wow.
So I was always very attracted towards. I was kind of often it was often said of me that I was kind of like a human, drum machine, because I was very good at keeping time. So that's the one thing I could do. I was very good at keeping time, and I could be very, consistent and loud. So what I did really just hit things loudly.
Yeah. So you're not like connected with both Adam and the Ants and the Monochrome staff. Did you play with sort of like in those two bands, or
well, no,
it was only when they were together?
So we were all mulched together in this band with no name that never got outside of the rehearsal studio. We did have one gig booked for the ICA in London in May 1977, and at just that point, Stuart had renamed himself Adam, and he was ill and in hospital. We never knew at the time what with, or at least it wasn't. In those days you didn't talk about things. You certainly didn't talk about anything that was mental health related. So that was the first of many times, in the subsequent decades, that he would just disappear for a few months. It would turn out that he was in hospital. It still happens now. I mean, he's gone very quiet now. Nobody knows what's going on. He's probably ill again, But we're a lot more understanding of that nowadays. And I think he's been formally diagnosed now with bipolar disorder. But at the time, he was just disappeared and was ill with some mysterious illness that none of us understood. So anyway, the reason I'm telling you that is that in one of the phases where he disappeared, me, Bid, Andy, and a guitarist called Tom, who changed his name to Leicester Square, continued to rehearse together. And I was working at an art centre for the ICA, so I arranged a gig there in the cafe. And then just sort of at the last minute, very, very, a week or two before that, Adam, as he was now called, reappeared and managed to persuade Andy and Tom, Leicester Square, that they needed to join forces with him, rather than with Bid. And so they took on that gig. That gig at the ICA then became the first dance gig, although it wasn't actually advertised as the act. It was advertised.
Oh, wow.
Nate, the name that I'd given them, the name that me, Bid, Andy, and Leicester. As it happened, Leicester Square didn't play that gig either, because Adam got in a new guitarist called Mark Ryan at the very, very last minute. So Adam on vocals, Andy Warren on bass, Mark Ryan on guitar, and a drummer called Paul played that first gig. Meanwhile, so now that leaves Bid, and Leicester Square is now back. This is the thing, people just to and fro.
Yeah.
Okay. So Leicester Square now is back with Bid. They ask me if I want to stay playing drums with them. They get in a bass player called Jeremy. We do some rehearsing in the church hall and do record a few demos. Some of those demos are on a monochrome set album, a kind of compilation album of very, very early material. Not Volume Contrast Brilliance, not that one that came out on Cherry Red. There's another one, Black and White Minstrels, that's what it's called. It's got the kind of TV images on the famous. It's got Bid as the girl from the TV testified. I'm kind of listed on that album.
Credits. Yeah.
When I listen to it, it doesn't sound like me though. I think someone else. Someone else has done something to it. But anyway, I can hear the hi hat and I can hear this and that and the other, and it's not me. But hey.
Well, you mentioned ICA. I just wanted to ask you about this because in 1976, the Throbbing Gristle did this exhibition. I think it's called
Come Transmissions. They were called then. They were an art collective called Come Transmissions, and yes, and they did an exhibition called Prostitution.
Yeah,
and
it's fascinating for me because being from the Philippines originally, growing up in the Philippines, we didn't get to hear about any of this. But apparently, there's like an MP who said that these people are the wreckers of civilization.
Yes, it all blew up, and it all became, a point of discussion in the Houses of Parliament, in the House of Commons. So that was a great big scandal. Funnily enough, this was mid-October 1976, and it was actually just a few weeks before the Sex Pistols would appear on the Bill Grundy show and then be swearing on television and that.
Yeah.
So we had these two major scandals about the morals of the nation and how young people were, all this stuff. Yeah, how civilization basically was falling apart. So one was in an art context and one was in a pop music context. But
Yeah.
two massive, great big, hoo-ha.
Yeah. Well, I said in the beginning that I read that you were actually there before punk was even called punk, before Sex Pistols.
Yeah, I think really it was the thing that's interesting just in the space of 6 weeks. I mean, obviously some of the newspapers were using the word punk because it had come over from New York, and it was being used about the musical movement that was happening in New York at the time. So the word punk was in use in certain circles and was being used in the music press. It just wasn't out there in the wider world. So the thing that's interesting is the difference in the sort of tabloid newspaper reports between the reports of the prostitution exhibition and the reports of the Sex Pistols on the Bill Grundy show, because at the prostitution exhibition, where a band called Chelsea played, actually that was, what were they called, LSD then? Anyway, whatever, they eventually, I mean, that had people like, Billy Idol and Gene October in it. So there was a lot of people like Susie Sue and Stephen Severin, a lot of the Sex Pistols crowd, a lot of the Clash, all of those people were there at that prostitution opening party. But the people like the Daily Mail or other tabloid newspapers, they didn't really have the word punk in their kind of repertoire, in their vocabulary at that time. So when they did all the newspaper reports the next day, they were just really struggling to describe the audience, the queue that was outside the door. And they were talking about boys dressed as Hell's Angels and girls dressed as prostitutes, and using this sort of terminology because they were just struggling to know what to call these people. After the Bill Grundy show, because the word punk ended up being used on that show, and Bill Grundy saying, "Oh, well, you're punks, are you? You're." So that was actually, that term was used on that show. So all of the tabloid papers the day after that.
Yeah.
The word punk, this enormous, suddenly we've got this 4-letter word, that is absolutely everywhere. And like a lot of kind of counterculture movements, as soon as there's a label for it, something that's very easy to apply to everything, it's kind of dead, really. It's kind of, like, for me, punk was something that was by the end of 76, early 77, it had gone,
Yeah. But it's more sort of like a lifestyle for you. It's not just really music, isn't it? Because for many of us, like us in the Philippines or something, like when you think of punk, you immediately think of punk music. But it's more than that. It's more sort of like a lifestyle, isn't it?
Yes, I think people like Malcolm McLaren never saw it as being anything much about music. For him, it's an art movement, it's about, and a lot of people that were the early Sex Pistols fans were not really people that went to a lot of gigs. They liked David Bowie, they maybe liked some sort of glam rock people, but they weren't people that went to all those pub rock kind of venues or saw loads and loads of bands. I think that kind of came a bit later. That was like the next wave of people. I think originally people were like into the Sex Pistols just as a sort of art project, or just as a situationist prank, or just something that was sort of substituting the status quo. And I think for me, the other key thing about it was that it was about individualism. It was about DIY. So as Mark Perry said, Mark P of Sleeping Blue, well, start your own fanzine, start your own band. Just do your thing. If you're just going to copy something, if you're just going to copy the Sex Pistols or just copy the Clash, that's not what it was about. It was about doing something new, which is why for me, as far as 1977 goes, the bands that I was interested in were the ones that I felt, sometimes they're people who I'm closely associated with, so perhaps biased, but they're people who've taken the idea of making something new, doing something original, and have gone
Yeah.
off down their own tracks. So the Ants, the Banshees, Wire, alternative television, ATV, Throbbing
Yeah.
Gristle, weren't part of something that became kind of parallel, thing. And then a little bit later on, we had all these people like Cabaret Voltaire, actually no, they were actually going at the time. They just went down south. But yeah, so there was plenty of people who were doing really interesting things. I mean, I love the
Yeah.
band Size, That was
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, so we've talked about sort of like the beginning of Adam and the Ants in the monochrome set, but
yeah,
what was your proper first band where you actually the drummer of
yeah,
this
and actually played in front of an audience.
yeah.
People's bedrooms. That was Rema-Rema.
Can you tell us sort of like the origin of Rema-Rema and how you became the drummer of Rema-Rema
Yeah.
as well?
So the other four, Marco Peroni, Mark Cox, Gary Asquith, and Michael Allen, they all knew each other anyway. Two of them, Marco and Mick, had been in the Models together, and they were all friends with the Banshees. And two of them, I think Gary and Mick, I think had either been to school or Sixth College or something together. So they were actually already a unit. They weren't quite a band yet, but they were a group of friends. When Marco and Mick split up the Models, or Letter Models, whatever, they decided to call it a day. It's because they felt it was too derivative. It was too just punk. Exactly what we talked about a minute ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Too. They didn't want to just be a copy of other punk bands. They wanted to do
right, yeah,
original and interesting. They wanted to do something. They were quite influenced by the kind of German groups like Kraftwerk and Neu and Can and those sort of groups, and they really liked Roxy Music and they really liked sort of Brian Eno and things like that. So they wanted to do something new, and originally they were gonna use a drum machine. But there was a lot of people at the time, Cabaret Voltaire and the Human League, and there was loads of people who were actually starting out
yeah,
or just becoming more well known at the time that were using drum machines. And so they almost kind of perversely decided that as there were so many drum machines around, maybe they'd go the other way and actually have a real drummer.
a real drummer, yeah, yeah,
So they put an ad in the music papers, and um, the ad sort of name check. I think it name checked Kraftwerk. It might have said something about Velvet, but it definitely mentioned Kraftwerk. And then it said no hi hats, and I thought, wow, okay, this one's got my name on it. So I phoned up the number given was just one name, Marco, and phone number. So I phoned up Marco and went to meet them. And that was it. And
yeah.
then next 6 months, we didn't actually play in public. We just made music by ourselves. And that kind of we were just waiting for the right moment. We didn't want to play support, so that as a brand new band that cuts out an awful lot.
Oh,
Um,
right, yeah, yeah,
where do you start? We didn't want to play support, and we didn't want to play all the regular rock venues. So we were just kind of waiting for the right opportunity.
yeah,
Meanwhile, we were just really enjoying exploring, creating a new sort of music, something that we were really happy with. So we had synthesizer, and we had Marco's wonderful feedback guitar. We had this rather interesting thing of having the bass as the lead instrument on a lot of songs, and having bass and drums really up front, often really driving the music with keyboards and guitar,
yeah, yeah.
kind of soundscapes that weave around the rhythms. It was very rhythm oriented, rhythm music.
Yeah, yeah,
So we happily kind of went 6 months. You know, we made quite a lot of demo things, if you want to call them that. You know, recording on TX 4 tracks and things. And actually, all of that material eventually did get released by 4AD a couple of years ago. I mean, it just sat around on tapes for 40 years. And,
yeah, yeah,
you know, um, yeah, and then eventually kind of got dragged out of the closet. And,
yeah.
saw
I
the light of day
think
as
it's a bit unusual. So, like putting an ad and it says specifically no hi hat.
I think that's pretty unusual. And that's why I was so sure it had my name on it, because it's like, I mean, I think there wasn't, you know, there was me and Kenny Morris from the Banshees, are probably about the only two people I can think of that were playing in this sort of style. And
Oh,
possibly Kenny was partly playing like this because he used to use my drum kit a lot of the time, and there was no hi hat, so maybe he had to. I don't know.
well,
Yeah, so we did eventually um, we did eventually play in public. We did our first gig on the 1st of January 1979, when after 6 months of playing in rehearsal studios and recording and
yeah.
experimenting with sound. So we played our first live gig on New Year's Day 1979, and that was at Toya Wilcox had a warehouse in Battersea, and that warehouse was called Mayhem. So people lived in it, but it was also used for parties and events and unusual gigs and things.
And you're the headliners. You
Yeah,
weren't. Yeah, yeah.
we were. Yeah, we organised it. It was our event, but we
Oh,
had
okay.
um,
Yeah.
we had the European Cowards and Tralala playing with us. So the European Cowards was Kevin Mooney's band. Kevin, who eventually joined the Ants in the sort of pop star era Ants. And
Hmm.
Kevin, by the way, who was married to Jordan of Sex Pistols now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So she was living there with Kevin in that warehouse. So they
Okay.
played, and then a band, the third band that was at the event was called Tralala, and they featured Adam's wife Eve. So it's all quite an incestuous. It's still
It's
quite
yeah.
people, you know, all the connections between all of us. And as I'm sure
Yeah.
you know, when Rema-Rema did disband, Marco ended up playing with Adam, so connections continued. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was Aiden said that it's very all these are very, very interesting because he was also into punk in Dublin at the time.
Ah,
You know, at the same time. So
yeah.
um where did the name Rima Rima come from?
It was the
Because he
name of
said,
one of the songs. Yeah, it's got no
oh,
meaning. It's just we have a song called Rema. We um, when we did eventually decide to venture out into the wide world and do this gig at
yeah.
Mayhem. Obviously, we had to have a name.
Oh, okay.
Just months. We never kind of pinned it down. You know, we just kept making lists of possible names. And my favourite was Suddenly It's Sin, which was the name of I think it was a Hank Jansen book that was on in Marco's room. I really liked that one. Anyway, there were loads of silly and not so silly names suggested, and we never actually pinned it down. And then of course we had to, because we had to advertise the event. And we just in desperation we just went through all the names of all the songs, and Rema it was.
Well, is it right to sort like I know it's sort of like branding or labeling it or anything, but Rima Rima, they're more new wave. The sound of Rima Rima, especially for us, so like this, you know,
Mm.
like there's a 12-inch which is entry exit. When I heard it first time, because I found a 12-inch copy of it, when I
Mm.
played it, and I thought this is really more like new wave. It's not punk.
Oh, not punk at all. No,
No,
that's that was very that was a very conscious. As I say, when Marco and Mick left the Models, it's because they did not want to. You
yeah,
know,
to be,
they
yeah,
they really did not want to to do that anymore. And also all of us, because we'd been early Sex Pistols fans and we've been part of that early scene, we were quite appalled by the whole thing of Sid Vicious joining the Sex Pistols and the way that went, and just
Oh,
and the Clash signing to CBS, when they supposedly were left wing, and I don't know, there was just loads of stuff. We'd had it. To we wanted to kind of dissociate ourselves from punk anyway, or at least to stay true to the original idea of experimentation and people making, the DIY thing, the do-it-yourself thing,
yeah.
just going down your own, road. Um, so yeah, it was quite conscious. We quite often got called post-punk.
Post,
Rather
yeah,
than,
yeah,
yeah,
post
I
punk,
think
yeah.
in a way it tends to be a bit more poppy, I think, but that's just labels, isn't it?
Yeah. And your label 4AD, because someone pointed it out to me when I posted the guest announcement on Facebook that
Mm.
you're a 4AD band, or it was
We were first signing, yeah.
yeah, and they were just new at the time. That label was just new when
We were their first signing, yes. With the label, we were supposedly we were in conversation with Peter Kent of Beggar's Banquet, and then Peter said he was working with this guy called Ivo, who wanted to start an offshoot of Beggar's Banquet, that or a new label that would
yeah,
be a different, very much experimental music, a different sort of sound. And um, Ivo said Rema-Rema was exactly the sort of thing he had in mind for this new label. So we were actually the first signing.
oh,
Yeah,
that's brilliant. Yeah, because now I mean 4AD, got
massive.
two twins. It's like a massive label.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've read some because I wanted to ask you, what's it like? Because I've read on this online that you change your fashion to sort of like go with the other guys, with the Rema guys, but the only thing that you kept is your high heeled sort of like
Yeah,
pair of boots.
yeah. I didn't wear
Yeah.
I didn't wear the high heels all the time anymore. Actually, I did have some little kind of flat beetle boot style footwear as
Oh.
well. Yeah.
So when you play drums, you weren't wearing your high heels when you were playing.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
of course it was. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, because I remember with Stephen Morris when he was on the show, he's advice to sort of like aspiring drummers. The one that he gave is buy yourself a good pair of comfy shoes, like comfortable shoes. And I was all like thinking, how do you sort of like play drums in
Well,
high
I had
heels?
a good pair of comfy high heel stilettos in black patent leather. So yeah,
Well, David Chambers, who's the drummer of a band called I mean, they're really good as well. He said that fascinating stuff and really enjoying it. So thank you for joining us, David. So Rema, you only released one 12-inch single at the time, but
yeah.
now it's like you were talking about the demos and everything. 4AD actually released it later on, like a
They
few
did,
years.
yeah. So it's all very odd because as I say, we were the first signing to 4AD, but then we split up, which caused complications. So they've signed a band that have now split up. But Ivo really, really liked us so much that he was determined that he was going to put us out. So even though we were the first signing, I think we're not technically the first record on 4AD because I think a couple of other things went out in the meantime. So a few
Oh,
months
right,
ago,
okay.
because there's this kind of odd thing going on where the band have
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
now split up despite being signed for it. and uh, and so yes, our one and only EP is called Wheel in the Roses. So that consists of two tracks that were previously recorded um, with a lovely guy called an engineer called Willie Brill. There's actually a document. If anyone who's interested in Rema, there's a documentary called "What You Could Not Visualize." It's doing the festivals around the world. Premiered in
yeah, yeah.
London first, And that's got lots of kind of insights. They've rounded up all these people like Ollie Brill and people like Chris Connolly and Steve Albini from Big Black, who's the cover of Rema-Rema. Yeah, so there's lots of and they've managed to get Ivo, who's a bit of a hermit these days, managed to get Ivo interviewed as well. So for anyone who's interested, that film has got lots of information.
Yeah.
It's quite an odd film because there's no live footage of it, So Marco Portia, who did who made the film, did an absolutely brilliant job. He somehow made a documentary about a band that there's no live footage of. So
Yeah.
there's this sort of weird thing of us being signed, but obviously there's going to be no more material. So the actual EP that came out had 2 studio tracks and 2 live tracks on the other side. Now there was a third studio track that was called Entry, which was there were problems with, partly because there was an out-of-time synth on it, but it was also deemed blasphemous, so that got pushed aside. It did come many years later, as you know, as part of the
Yeah.
Entry stroke exit. But it's also
Exit.
eventually released by. So in 2019, get a bit confused about the years. It's sort of pandemic scuttles our view of how many
Yeah.
something was. I keep thinking it was just like 2 years ago, but actually I think it was 2019. That 4AD did eventually put out an album. Now this was slightly. I mean, obviously I don't mind how it was marketed. It's fine, but in a lot of the reviews, it was described as the long lost 4AD album, as if we'd made, Rema-Rema album 4AD, as if we'd recorded an album and it somehow got lost in a cupboard and was only now being released. But the actual truth of the matter is we'd split up, there was no album, there were no tracks other than those three studio tracks that we recorded, which was Feedback Song, Rema-Rema and Entry. Everything else was just demos and live tapes and things. But I suppose the difference now was that technology, studio engineering and technology had increased capabilities.
Yeah.
That quite scuzzy cassette tapes of and TAC, 4-track things.
Yeah, photo recording. Yeah.
Portobello Road, whatever, can now be really cleaned up and made into something that you can actually put out on record. And I got to give kudos to Gary Asquith, the lead singer, or one of the 2 singers in Rema-Rema.
Yeah.
Really Mark Cox is kind of like the archivist. Mark had loads and loads, had all the original tapes in the cupboard, and he handed them over to Gary, and Gary, liaised with 4AD and somehow turned all this stuff into something that 4AD put out. So
Yeah.
the Lost album isn't really anything of the sort. It's
Yeah.
bit
Sorry.
sorry.
Well, you mentioned about this documentary because I've seen it on social media. Photos of you, all 5 of you. So like you got back together, and so like talking about this.
No, Marco, or 4 of us did. Marco chose not to have anything to do with the film for his own reasons.
Oh.
He's kind of gone very anti Rema-Rema. It's funny actually because we did an interview in 2010. We all got back together again after this sort of massive, decades of not seeing each other.
Yeah.
We did an interview for Resonance FM. The 5 of us in a room together. We got on really well. We all talked in a very positive way about the experience. We talked about music. We went out for lunch together afterwards. So that was really great. But in recent years, Marco's just been really down on Rema-Rema. I don't really know why. I haven't actually seen him for a couple of years. But anyway, that's his stuff. So he chose not to have anything to do with making a documentary.
So there's no possibility of doing a reunion gig, even if it's
no, we wouldn't. We've all said that we wouldn't do that anyway because it's a thing of the time. I mean, we just existed for less than 2 years, and that's you can't change history. That's how we were, and then we stopped.
Yeah.
So I just don't feel it would be right. And anyway, I don't play drums anymore, so
when was the last time you played drums live, like on stage?
Well, the the trajectory from after Rema-Rema split up. I formed. I was in a band called Weekend Swingers, which was me, Marco Peroni, Andy Warren, and a lead singer called Jay, and another guitarist called Paul Starr. So Jay Strongman, who went on to become a very well-known DJ, and Paul Starr. So we were a kind of we were called the Weekend Swingers, and we were a fun band. We just did cover versions, and kind of punkabilly, but with Marco's lovely, heavy duty kind of guitar. So it always sounded something a little bit different, a bit more cramps than Meteors, really. And we just did a few. We were just doing it for fun, and it was just really nice for me to be playing with Andy again. It was really nice for me to be doing something with Marco. That Rema had become quite weighed down and heavy, and Marco was really keen to leave. So just doing something together was lovely. So there was that, and that went into the L Trains, which was with after Marco and Andy are now busy with the Anthony Monochrome set, so they can't really do it any longer. So we get a new bass player in, and we carry on as the L Train. But I don't know. I did that for a year or so. Then it was all right. I had a kind of gap of a few years where I didn't play. I was kind of really busy dancing and teaching dance and stuff. And then I joined Psychic TV, which. So, and Jen and I had made a record together. Me, Jen, and Alex Ferguson had made a record together whilst Throbbing Gristle was still going, but they were in their kind of dying, throes. And that was kind of the beginning of Psychic TV, because it was Alex and Jen writing together. And Jen really wanted me to play drums in that lineup, at the beginning of Psychic TV. But I felt, I don't know, I had reservations, so I stepped back. But then got persuaded a couple of years later and did join. So the mid-1980s, Psychic TV. But I then had 3 children, 3 years apart, between 1986 and 1992. So the next time I did anything was in the mid-1990s. So I was briefly in a Brighton band. We called ourselves Cowboy Beyonder. We just played a few gigs. We didn't really do anything. And I never really had my heart in it. It never really felt right. I also did some. I did some playing, kind of experimental dance, performance art, percussion stuff with an Indonesian performance artist and dancer and a couple of other dancers. And I was playing like marimba and marimba bowls, stuff like that. So I did that. We didn't really have a name, I don't think. we just did things.
You just played.
But that was like, experimenting. It was more like sound art and experimental relationship between movement and
But you've always been so like busy, even when you didn't play drums. When you stopped playing drums, you were so like involved in like performance, sort of performance art.
Well, I when we moved to Brighton, once I kind of emerged a little bit from the fuzz of being a mother and having little ones, I kind of channeled, well, other than doing some of the stuff with playing marimba and playing, working with sound, but I was mostly involved in creating dance and performance within a nightclub context. So we were doing stuff with performing with rather than on a stage, like within the crowd in a nightclub, and and working with video. Did a lot of stuff with projecting onto the body, which was really interesting.
And apparently you taught ballroom dancing as well. Is that right?
That goes back years. Yeah, I was doing.
Wow.
I was doing that many years ago. Yeah. So that was just. It was actually a very kind of easy way to, or not easy, but you know what I mean. It was a convenient way to earn money whilst playing drums. Yeah, all the time I was in Psychic TV. I mean, I had this very bizarre lifestyle. because I was in this kind of considered quite well bizarre and esoteric and outre full of band companies, art collective,
Yeah.
with all of the piercings and all of the outrageous
Uh,
and then but then I'd get up and the next day I'd be going into the most very respectable ballroom dancing
ballroom. Well,
school.
yeah. Well, I've actually got a lot more questions for you, but I know that you have to go. But one,
All right for a while.
before I talk about the book, before I ask about the book,
Yeah.
the recent thing that you did, it was this is an exhibition called Crash Ride Snare, and it finished yesterday.
Yeah.
Apparently. And this is so fascinating because all the art involved were created by drummers.
Yes.
It's like drummer heaven. It was like it's something. When I saw it, I thought I wish I was in London so I could sort of like go and see it.
A really nice. It was a really nice little gallery called Pension Fine Art, which is in Penge, which, funnily enough, is not that far from that part of South London that I come from. Although it's a lot more. It's a lot more shishi these days, as
Oh,
has vintage shops and cappuccino bars these days,
yeah,
rather than skinhead pubs. Yeah, and I went to the opening, which was on a week ago, Saturday the 19th. Really lovely. I saw some people I haven't seen for years. So June from the Modettes,
yeah.
Modettes was there. She's got video work in. Yeah, lots of people.
Palm Olive from the Slits. It's like,
she wasn't
yeah.
there. She lives in America now. But
Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah.
yeah, Palmolive or Paloma, as her birth name, her real name is Paloma.
Yeah.
Palmolive. Beautiful. Yeah, she had a couple of really, really nice paintings, really beautiful textures, very, very
Wow.
paint, on the canvas. The guy that organised it, the curator, Nick Cash, who was the drummer in Prague Vec and in Fad Gadget, he was someone you ought to interview, actually.
Wow.
No, he's such an interesting guy because he's played in, let's say, he was in Prague Vec, he was in Fad Gadget, he played drums with lots of different people, but he curated this exhibition. And the reason he did is he's a visual artist and a drummer, so he's got this interest. He wanted to find out how many other people there were out there that do a bit of both. Or I mean, I don't really consider myself a visual artist, but what I am sometimes is an installation maker. So I created this piece called In My Room that was commissioned by Spill Festival, which is a major performance and experimental art festival in London. And they'd commissioned this piece, and I created a whole room full of punk objects and artifacts, a lot of original material from my own life, and I just took a tiny bit of this, just some of the collages I've made, and one sort of 7-inch single that was made specifically just for use inside the installation, was never released in any other way. It was just
wow.
there. So I've made that with my husband Foz, who's a musician composer. He was also in the Monochrome Set one stage and in David Townshend's Spirit Wife. So Foz and I made a record to be played in this room, which was cool.
Yeah.
So in the recent exhibition, I just took a couple of bits from the installation, plus the little record player, like a dance set record player with this specially made 7-inch single. So those were my pieces in the exhibition.
Well, I saw a picture of that dance set record player with flowers. It looks amazing. So
very sweet, yeah.
Specifically made or tailor made for you?
No, it was just bought a few years ago. I just saw it and thought, I've got to have that now. When I did In My Room, I actually decorated the inside of it with original Polaroids and stickers and things like that. But I didn't do that for this
exhibition. Yeah.
But if I ever remount the In My Room, it'll get the full works.
Is there a chance, or sort of like, is there plan of so like bringing this exhibition in the Northwest so that the fans so like here it's all like Manchester or Liverpool can actually go and see it as well.
Well, I think Nick is working on possibly Liverpool and Glasgow. Yeah,
Oh, brilliant.
yeah, and I
That would be
will update you on that. And
that's brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah.
and will in fact, and I will put you in touch with Nick because I think he's someone that you know
Oh,
you ought to have a conversation with. Very interesting guy.
oh, that would be nice. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna ask you now about your book. So it's
Oh,
called
yes.
69 Exhibition Road.
69 Exhibition Road, which is where
Now,
I lived. Yeah,
it's the actual address where you lived.
real address. It doesn't sound like it possibly could be, but it's a real address in London. It's South Kensington, which is very posh these days. But the house at the time, me and Andy Warren lived there together for the 5 or 6 years that we lived there. It was very, very run down. Not quite a squat. I mean, it was, we paid rent, but it was that we had there were mice running around in the basement, and it was it was, and all the window frames are falling apart. It's a real
Yeah.
big tatty old house. Um, so yeah, the book is subtitled 12 True Life Tales from the Fag End of Punk Porn and Performance. And so it's 12 interconnected stories. It's not strictly chronological, but
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of so 12 almost standalone stories. Each one takes a different theme. So there's one that's called Ant Music for Sex People. It's about the whole Adam and the Ant story from my perspective, anyway. And there's one called Fond Affections that's about the Rema-Rema story. There's one called La 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 Lola, which is about my work as a go-go dancer and stripper in the pubs of the East End. There's one called Everyone is a Prostitute, a title I stole from Subway Sect. That is all about the ICA and the prostitution exhibition.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's one called Ladies' Night that's about Louise's and the other clubs and about the kind of club culture and the crossover between the gay scene and the punk scene. Because I felt that was a story that really had to be told, because
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just got, punk history has been taken over very much by, it's just the kind of Sid Vicious model of the kind of
Yeah.
chain wielding boy, in a leather jacket with studs. That's become the archetypal image of punk, and that was
Yeah.
punk. Punk was female, Vivian and Jordan
Yeah. Yeah.
and the girls that eventually became the Slits, and and there's so many of us in bands, or forming bands, or in bands. It was,
Yeah.
women were really crucial and really at the heart of it all. And that, I don't know, I just felt a lot of that history got kind of shifted and changed. And the fact that punk started in the gay clubs, it just did. I mean, it started in Louise's, it started, and Lacey Lady and Ilford. I mean, people, the whole crossover between punk and disco, which were then in later years, that it was set up as if they were somehow mortal enemies. What side of the fence are you on? Is it punk or is it disco? And actually they were completely interconnected. All the early Sex Pistols bands, they were like soul boys of girls and clubbers, and most people in the early Sex Pistols entourage were at least 50% were gay. It's like how did all this history suddenly become about macho heterosexual boys? I don't know.
It's true. It's very interesting because I think, like, especially for us, like Filipinos, if you like say that you're a punk, you won't associate yourself with the gay community or anything because you're a punk. You're like you wear leather jackets.
It just by the time Sid Vicious had replaced Glenn Matlock in the Pistols, and the Clash had become like the kings of punk or whatever, it just took on a whole different vibe. It became I'm not saying it became something it wasn't. It's just that one aspect of it became the main aspect.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually very, very, very many different things that were all working through each other,
Yeah.
and
And all these stories happened when you were living at 69 Exhibition
yes,
Road between
there's,
1976 and
yes.
82.
I mean, there's a sort of slight cheat in that um, there's one story that predates all of it. That's a kind of it's actually the second story in the book that just gives some background stuff of where I was as a kind of 19-year-old,
All right.
pre-punk. So there's that
Yeah. Yeah.
story that's and that story I tell in the second person. Actually, I say you as if I'm addressing my younger self, because I just feel that story, just could picture this, is actually kind of, I almost didn't include it in the book because it is kind of different and separate. But then on the other hand, it's got a lot of that kind of background of where I was coming from.
Well, yeah, yeah. And this book is still available, isn't it? I mean, you can get it online.
It came out in November last year in hardback. It sold out in hardback.
Yeah.
It released at the beginning of 2023 in paperback, and it's been doing all right. Yeah, it's available through well, you can get it on Amazon if you wish, but it's also available through people like Rough Trade.
Right. Yeah. Because, like I said, when I went to see you, it got sold out. I mean, you've run out of books there, so but at least it's still available online. Another thing is, I know it's 3 o'clock.
I did Rebellion. I did a reading at Rebellion Festival, which is a big punk festival in Blackpool. I did that.
Yeah.
And they asked me to bring books, and like my publisher didn't have any, and then my local bookshop here in Brighton had sold out, and it was just ridiculous because I ended up just somehow, we got hold of. We had to buy them ourselves off of Amazon. It was stupid. So I ended up going up to this massive festival with like a mere 6 books in my suitcase, which sold out within 2 minutes. So it was all silly. But anyway, we'll go and get one. But yeah, it's on Strange Attract Press.
Yeah.
Which is a very, very lovely small publishing press. And they publish a lot of music-related stuff. They publish books. They publish books about Coil and David Tibet and Shirley Collins and Incredible String Band. I don't know. They've just got a real interest in esoteric music, alternative, counterculture, and they're lovely people. And then it's a kind of best of both worlds, though, because it's distributed by Penguin Random House, so you can actually order it online anywhere in the world because it's got a major distributor. Yes,
yeah. Well, I also want to say I've got to sort of include this, that your show on radio, Slack City Radio, is now 2 years. Yeah, it's now 2 years. It's called Granny Max Takes a Trip, which
it is.
Really nice. That's a very nice title.
It's a cultural reference that maybe if you're not in the UK you don't get, but there was a very famous shop in the King's Road right next door to where Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood eventually started their shop, or up the road from there, and that shop was called Granny Takes a Trip. But I think they took it from somewhere in. I think it was originally a West Coast American term, a sort of psychedelic term. Granny Takes a Trip. So I did that, and then I put the Max in brackets.
The Max, yeah.
Because and I quite like this idea of this kind of alter ego. Not alter ego, but a version of myself who's Granny Max, my grandmother now. So Granny Max, the kind of the remit of the radio show is Granny Max just travels like a kind of slightly fluffy, hair-headed, sort of granny through time and space. So the show could have anything from Lou Reed's Metal Machine music to Delia Derbyshire to Nancy Sinatra to the Cocktail Twins to something from Cuba or Katana.
And what about pop music? So like mainstream pop music, like nowadays. So like no, you don't play those.
I don't. I play. I don't. People send me things sometimes, and to be honest, I don't. I just don't feel like I don't feel I keep up well enough with what's going on to to
Yeah.
to be that knowledgeable on contemporary music. But then things, somehow invade the old grannies, kind of come into the ether somewhere. So I do include. I've been playing things like Wet Leg and Jockstrap, and
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, yeah.
there's a few bands that I really like. And I do play.
And it's on every week on Slack City
Actually,
Radio?
it's on fortnightly on Slack City.
Fortnightly, yeah, yeah.
You can go on to totallyradio.com, which is the sort of mothership, the matrix. Totallyradio.com is hosts a number of community and alternative
Oh,
radio.
right. Okay, yeah.
Go on to totallyradio.com and you put in Granny Max Takes a Trip, it will bring up the archive. So all of the shows for the last 2 years are on there.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I just go, okay, well, we're just going to go to Iceland today. That's all going to be Reykjavik. Or sometimes we,
Oh,
sometimes we go to Brazil.
oh,
Sometimes we do theme. Yeah, it could be.
yeah.
My theme
Well,
was the last one. Last week I did one, and the theme was mirrors. So
all right.
yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah. So it's totally, so like totally radios. So like totally radios and another one, and
Yeah.
then Granny Max takes a
Granny
trip.
Max Takes a Trip.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've only got all these quick questions I wanted to ask because I normally ask this with drummers. When you were drumming, did you twirl? Did you do some twirling when you were drumming
Oh,
with the stick? I know you don't like the hi hat. You don't play with the hi hat, but did you twirl?
did I? I don't think I did actually. I think I'm terrified that if I do anything other than hang on to them really tightly, something dreadful.
Oh. But did you ever had any sort of like disasters or accidents? Maybe I don't know. Like
I remember. They're no terrible disasters. But I'm writing another book now. Actually, it's about the 1980s, and will include stuff about Psychic TV. We did have one gig in a massive stadium when Psychic TV were on a European tour. I think we were either Vienna or anyway, we were somewhere in the middle of the Europe, and we had to get. It was a big festival, and to get on stage, we had to walk our equipment through the crowd, like a massive festival crowd. And somehow, by the time I got to the stage, one of my drums had gone missing.
oh no.
Someone had just run off with it as a souvenir, So I did play. I did play one Psychic TV concert with one tom tom down.
Oh god. Did you ever get it back?
No.
No.
We just, it just went, and yeah, we just played the gig, and then the next day we were in Berlin because we were playing the Loft in Berlin the next day, and and we just had to go to a drum shop in Berlin and buy another one. That was that.
Oh,
so
no.
it was, yeah, because I do hit things really hard. So I have had skin spray, things like that. I've had drum pedals, fall off, and
like you mentioned Mo Tucker's. You're sort of like a drumming hero. Any other drumming heroes you got?
I really like Jackie Leipzig, whose name I can't even pronounce, from Cannes. Just much fancier than me, and I could never play anything like that, but I do.
Yeah.
In fact, although I will say, and I do say this in the book, that there's quite a number of Rema-Rema songs that came about because I'm trying to be him. Like I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to copy one of his patterns, but it's like a poor woman's version of Can. It somehow sounds all right, so that ends up being the start of a new Rema-Rema song. So that did happen. So I really like him. I do like jazz, so I do like people like Art Blakey. Again, these aren't people I want to be, they're just people that I kind of admire,
Yeah.
Earlier, I do the kind of classic pop stroke rock, sort of Charlie. Charlie Watts could probably do all sorts of fancy.
Yeah.
But he sits at the back and plays a rhythm, and I think that's great. I've never had much interest in that kind of. I mean, the sort of Tom Bonham kind of, throwing the drum kit down the stairs.
With having like a billion, so like yeah.
Yeah, and I like a lot of nameless. I like a lot of nameless drummers. The drummers of the drummers of Burundi or the yeah, I used to listen to a lot of things that were on non-such records or whatever, and things from around the world, and just really.
Yeah, and finally, last question is advice to aspiring drummers.
I don't know. I feel a bit of a fraud, really. As I say, I've never taken a drum lesson. I've never. Yeah. But, I suppose just the might as well just stick to the punk ethos, really, which is don't be afraid and just do it. Don't let anyone tell you you can't. Because people have sometimes people have asked me, oh, it's really unusual for girls to be drummers, or what did you? But I'll just be honest and say it's never occurred to me not to do something because I was female, or it's
that's actually very good. That if you feel like if you want to do it, then just do it.
I think that is the advice for aspiring drummers: is just hit things and don't worry about it,
Yeah. And what's next? So, what's your next exhibition or gig or book event?
I'm working on the 1980s book, which will also come out on Strange Attractor, probably not for a year or two, because that whole publishing process. The Crash Ride Snare exhibition, as I say, will possibly be going to other places. That's been negotiated.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to that.
I've done a few. I mean, I still sometimes do a few I do some spoken word sound art sort of pieces now and again. So maybe there'll be something happening there. I haven't got any immediate plans, but that's another outlet at the moment.
Yeah.
I've retired from the kind of dance and theatre work, basically. So that's good. That's sort of opened up some more time to get on with writing.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll find out more about it, on social media, so like Facebook, all those things. So,
I'll tell you one thing I mustn't forget. Actually, as a little thing, there's another exhibition opening in a few weeks' time in Brighton. That's all about. It's things that are owned by two collectors called Lee and Kim Oliver, and they've got loads of kind of ephemera, loads of stuff relating to Throbbing Bristol and Psychic TV and Coil and Crass. So there's going to be an exhibition in Brighton that's going to open at the end of September. That's going to have loads of artifacts from mostly from Coil and Crass. Some of these other stuff as well. And a tiny bit of writing that some of the texts I write are going to go up on. There's a few people who've been out who know those bands have been asked to write reflections that will go up on the wall, handwritten reflections. So,
will any part of your inner room installation going to be included in that, or
no? It's all Lee and Kim's stuff. Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Well, so, flyers and I don't know, things that they collected with the years.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Max, for saying yes to Ask the Drummer. I really enjoyed that one. I mean, it's also I've learned a lot about like punk and what it was like here in the UK. Being coming from the Philippines, it's different from us. So you only get to hear about, like you said, Sid Vicious and Sex Pistols and all those things.
Cartoon version, yeah.
So I'm sorry that it took like 15 minutes longer, but
no worries at all.
And good rest of the weekend. But so thank you once again, and I hope you won't be late to your engagement or your next like thing.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been lovely to talk to you. And if you fancy it, buy the book 69 Exhibition Road. Uh,
Yeah, it's online,
Great
available online.
poem,
Yeah,
and look out.
yeah.
Oh yeah, and if you want to follow me on social media, I think I'm usually just Dorothy Max on most
On
things.
Instagram, are you on Instagram as well? Instagram and Twitter.
Max. I'm on Twitter, which I hate and don't use, as Dorothy Max. I started to use Threads as Dorothy Max. I'm on Facebook as Dorothy Max, although I think it comes up as Dorothy Max prior. But you'll
Yeah.
find me if you want to. When it
Yes.
goes to you. And
Well,
just message me if you've got anything else to ask anybody. I'm happy to happy to
okay.
message.
Well, thank you so much. I really hope I will see you again someday soon. Maybe in one of these exhibitions. Maybe if you come to the Northwest with your exhibition, the drummers exhibition, that would be really
Yeah, I'll
nice.
let you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Max.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. She's so amazing. I mean, I'm really so like in awe. Like I said, when I was doing the script last night, I was like, oh my god. I, I've actually got a few other things that I haven't asked her because I thought, well, she's going somewhere. We've got to like make sure we finish by 3 o'clock, and it's actually already 17 minutes past. But anyways, thank you so much, Max, for saying yes to Ask the Drummer, and thank you everyone for joining us live. We'll be back next week with another Mank legend. I'm really looking forward to this, so like guest for next week. So I hope you'll join me again. And as always, love music, love life, love drummers, and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Oh no, it's a bank holiday Monday, bank holiday weekend, so you've got Monday off as well. Well, only in the UK. Sorry, not in Manila. Sorry, but like, yeah, just in the UK. So enjoy the holiday, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now. Bye. Bye.